loves light mode. And what we're doing today is reviewing Team Liquid versus TSM. Now, before we get into Game 1 pick and ban, again, I'll confirm that I saw Game 1. It's actually like not at the top of my memory because it's been a while. I watched it live after casting LCK final and watching all of the LEC series. So, until the game gets started, I don't remember much of it. I haven't seen games 2 and 5. I know who wins. I know the games are roughly pretty long outside of game 4, but I don't have any other information. Now, I am going to also, before we get started, as you guys are probably aware, I like to go over things like stats, and there's a little experiment I want to do for this series just to kind of give you guys an idea of what I'm about when I'm preparing for judging a team at an international event. So LCS spring playoffs and things like that here. So some few notes. We'll start off with the Oracle's Elixir thing that I did last time out. I want to remind everyone that the LCS is a pretty slow region. Combined kills per minute. It's kind of the stat that I'm enjoying the most recently. And stats are a really risky thing to use. I think in general, stats are over-discussed on Riot streams. I feel like they were under-discussed years ago, but now I think they're overused. I hear too many arguments that are fully stats-based that don't incorporate what games look like and feel like in terms of like actually watching them, because I think just saying this stat exists, therefore this is true. Stats have never been more flawed in League of Legends analysis. We get funnel games like they were introduced last year. There's been a lot of, Frostmancy games, and some stats are controlled for that. Some stats are not. Usually Riot given stats are controlled for funnel games. I'm not sure how they'll deal with Frostmancy games, where gold earned might be either inflated or deflated, or CS is definitely going to be skewed. Like, a lot of that stuff makes analysis actually kind of tricky. So I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but this year I've taken a very conscious effort since kind of Rift Rivals last year and Funnel to decrease the amount of stat jargon I provide on my broadcasts and only use those stats if it really plays into kind of something that I've noticed or discussed or researched separately. But for the purpose of this series, combined kills per minute and the fact that it's low is relevant. The LCS has the lowest combined kills per minute of any region. It's LCS and LCK, to no one's surprise. But you do notice here, combined kills per minute for Cloud9 is 0.69. Counterlogic Gaming at 0.49 is the lowest of any region. TSM, again, playing pretty slow games, although the game pace was increasing towards the end of the regular season. So even this stat of TSM being a slow team is a little bit skewed. By slow, I mean combined kills per minute. So per minute, not a lot of people are dying on either team. So that means you're not seeing a lot of kills. It means Twitch chat is saying Resident Sleeper, where are the kills at, and things like that. It doesn't mean game speed. It just means the amount of bloodiness or action is quite low. I think this is a little bit of a misnomer because I think TSM games had higher combined kills per minute towards the end of the season. But yeah, the bloodiness in this region, not very high. You move over to, I opened up LCK, right? LCK regular season, combined kills per minute. Also, as you can see, on the lower side. No 0.49, thankfully, but the range of 0.69 to 0.49 is 0.68 to 0.54 in the LCK. So the champion kills per minute is definitely on the lower side. Thank you to people subscribing with Twitch Prime. As I mentioned, I will go over your names after this series review is over, but for now, no notifications as you notice. So yeah, the LPL one is the one everyone wants to see. If you missed the last series, you'll see the confirmation. LPL, if you like bloody games, the bloodiness stat, it's Poggers. This is a Poggers bloodiness stat. Invictus Gaming, who will be going to MSI, congratulations to IG, 1.04 IG kills or enemy kills every minute. Someone is dying every minute in the game. So if it's a 28-minute game, there will be at least 28 kills altogether. So that tells you that it's a very different style of game being played over there. And as people who took opposition with my tweet about IG being favorites knows, my read is right now that it's going to be an action-packed MSI meta where the best teams will be the ones who play the most active early games with people dying, the fiesta games, if you will. And that's why I have IG as my overall favorite. But today, we're just talking mostly about Team Liquid and TSM, who played in the final of the LCS. Looking over the individual teams, you know, we've gone over this before. I reviewed the TL versus TSM game. This was the best of one that was played as the, I think, final game of the season, or at least on the last match day. And if you guys remember it, if you haven't watched it, then by all means go and watch the YouTube VOD that is on my YouTube channel for TSM. If you want a quick TLDR, TSM had that amazing teleport bot lane from Bjergsen on the Zillion that got the bot lane rolling. That was the only winning lane in terms of early game that kind of TSM were trying to play around. We talked about the Vladimir versus Akali and how they never played around Vlad. Like, if you remember that game, Impact never got ward coverage. The Zillion Kindred always controlled that area. So Vlad kind of never really got anything done. And then TSM was able to close pretty early, like 33 minutes here in this game. So that was the last time these two teams played. That's the most recent data point for this series. But it also raises some questions. So I talked a bit about this. I'm going to open up a Google Doc, actually, and throw it up on the screen. One thing I like to do when I'm reviewing with a, you know, future performance lens, and when I have, you know, the full, what's the word, context for this series, is to judge what is it that I'm trying to learn about TL from this VOD review. And we got a lot of people joining me today, like right now, 900 people who, you know, probably have watched this series already, or if they haven't, they've heard about it, they've read results, and they all have different reasons and different biases for coming to watch series. We have TL fans who want to hear their team is good. They're really hoping that their team gets a good review here. TL fans who just want more information. TSM fans who are feeling sad and sheepish about not winning on the day. NA fans who want their region to be represented well after C9 made it to semifinals of Worlds last year. So there's a lot of different reasons to watch a series. So for me, the thing I'm looking to here is obviously, you know, on a simple level, how good is TL? How good is TSM? Who's going to win? Who's going to win this series? Even though I know the answer to that. And is it the right team? Because I know there was that discourse between Verdius and his kind of followers about, like, TSM was a better team on the day, stuff like that. Like, those are things we'll definitely look into. But when it comes to, like, what I took away from TL's weaknesses from the best of one against TSM, and then now this best of five final is, my biggest thing I'm interested in is how does, and yes, you're going to have to hear some clack from my very loud Philco keyboard, how does Team Liquid draft, play, utilize Impact as a resource? That's my kind of biggest query, is that in this series, they took the Vlad, a scaling matchup, never really gave him anything, never put any jungle impact around him. And then it didn't work. And then we were like, well, why did you play Vlad if you're never really going to play around Vlad? Like, why is he not just playing an Ornn? So I want to understand, coming away from this series, where is Impact at? Because I think Impact is a player that people have the most choice words for. Who some will kind of talk about how he's a former world champion, therefore he's good. Some will talk about recent games where he failed, and that's why he's bad. There's so many things up in the air about Impact. About how good or bad or unremarkable or remarkable he is. And it's very hard for me to fully rate those points. Like, is he top die NAR Impact from 2016? Is he, struggling? Is he doing well? Does the meta suit him? Does it not? I think Impact is a very important person for them coming to MSI, where the Shy is there, where Khan is there, where Wonder is there. You got three of the best top laners in the world, and you have a player who is a world champion, who is usually very reliable, who is often given not much and told to be fine. And it's very hard to do that against really great top laners, of which we've already named three who are at MSI. So given that I noticed it, and when TL and TSM played last time, I want to know where's Impact at and where TL at, playing around or not around Impact. That's my first thing. The other thing I remember from the TL TSM series, and also TL's lost to FlyQuest, is how practiced is Team Liquid at correct back timings, vision games, big objectives. So if you remember in the FlyQuest series, PapaSmithy put Santorin into the ground, and then TL started playing around the wrong lanes. Their vision didn't really coordinate with the objectives they needed to be focusing on. They would back and then go to kind of re-invade an area of the map and not have really put in the due diligence that actually FlyQuest had been last seen around that area and were defending it. People got picked, and there was one pick on Core JJ, into a pick on PapaSmithy, into a pick on further members. And then the game plan kind of fell apart because it felt like Team Liquid just wasn't clean and concise and on point at transferring their early advantage into solid mid-game advantages. So I'm interested to know, how good is Team Liquid at identifying which lane to playing around, how to put down vision around that lane, objective, whatever the kind of case is, and then play logical League of Legends where no one kind of forgets that they probably shouldn't be walking up to a brush and dies. That's my second interest about Team Liquid here, to see if they, in a final with a lot of prep and a lot of hype and a lot of kind of lights on them, can they play logical League of Legends? Because I generally think of Team Liquid as a very good standard team. And that doesn't mean they're of a standard level and other people are of an elevated level. It means I think of them as largely playing kind of the by the books plan, and then letting other people throw things at them, and then kind of catching what's bad about what the other team's throwing and turning it to their advantage, but also minimizing kind of the strategies of the enemy. So they are kind of the control, I guess, style to the chaos style, someone like IG. But if you try to do that and then make your own mistakes, like if you have internal consistency problems picking for standard, you're going to lose to the chaos team a lot. And I would argue it's a chaos meta, so I think playing standard is harder with less vision in the game, so that gets hard as well. So that's why I am interested to see how practice the team look at correct back timings, vision games, read big objectives. That doesn't mean just Baron and Dragon. It could also mean playing to the right side lane and things like that. Now, before we get started with the review, I'm interested to know, with the chat here, we've got almost 1,000 people here. What do you guys want to know about Team Liquid, and whether that's not so much a question of me right now. Like, what are we trying to learn about TL to judge them fairly for MSI? Like, what are good learnings about TL that will give us the best picture to kind of at the end of the stream look over these questions, work out whether we have full answers, and then have an updated kind of power level of TL. Like, who knows where we're going to get to, but apart from where's Impact's at and where's kind of TL's mid-game macro at, what are other things that, with the benefit of watching the series for some of the people who are in chat, or, if you have a good question that you feel like I'll be able to answer with watching this series, like what do we want to know? So I'm going to have a quick look through the chat here, so I'll read over things that look interesting. Soshi, early game faults, how will they handle aggression, jungle analysis versus other regions? Yep, I think that plays into the mid-game point here, but I think that's a good point there. What are their weaknesses like? Are they a one-dimensional team? I think that's a good one. Are Team Liquid, Team Solo mid? I always remember not to write Team Solo mid because they want to be known as TSM, but then I started writing team and wrote Team Solo. Whoops. Are Team Liquid a one-dimensional team? What are their weaknesses, and how do those weaknesses stack up to other teams at MSI? Now, we won't be able to have the full answer to the second part here because we're mostly indexing our prep on this particular series today, but, you know, over time we'll be able to answer that question. But I just wanted to extend it to what are they weak at, but what are the teams at MSI good at? And is that one of the weaknesses of Team Liquid? Because then that's a problem, right? If TL's weakness is another team's strength, you know, that's going to be a problem. Will playing through bot lanes win them games at MSI? That's a very interesting question. And we'll see if 3 and 4 are more related than I might expect from coming out. Because we do remember that they were playing through bot lane rather than playing through impact in that last series. How well they manage falling behind and how they attempt to stabilize. Yeah. Very interesting question. See, this is a really good. I really like all these questions. If you can come up with solid questions like this, it says a lot about how you think about the game. Because these are sort of critical questions that are really good to ask. I just wanted to, you know, share this with chat because it's these are the sort of things that I kind of bounce around my head when I'm prepping for games, but I haven't done it as a group exercise. So this is fun. They're mid laner. Sure. Let's leave it as Jensen question mark because it's a fun meme. Will they be able to analyze the game or will they just show their personality? You'd hope that they're coming in with the right mindset, but I think mindset is something that's going to be very hard for us to gauge. How good is TL Vision game set up around Baron? I agree. SJAG84, that is a very important thing that we've kind of talked about here. Jensen is a huge weak point for them. Let's see. I'm someone who traditionally has really liked Jensen as a player. I don't think... I think people want to think of Jensen as Pobelter now because he's Team Liquid mid and because they probably had really high expectations of what a new mid that wasn't Jensen, who had in general performed better than Jensen in the past, would look like on TL with better players around him, arguably. And then Jensen hasn't hit those high highs. And now they're like, haha, second coming of Pobelter. But I think that's really harsh on what I've seen from Jensen and what I've known from working with him in the past. I've observed his gameplay and C9 scrims many, many times. I think Jensen is a really good mid laner with a good mind for the game who works hard. I think he's a very competitive mid laner, and I don't think he's had international fall-offs as a player, which I think really does amplify his reputation. So I think, you know, people always have their knives out for the best team, and someone has to be the reason that perhaps they won't do well, and it's not double lift. It's, you know, who's it going to be? And it feels like Jensen is the latest person. I think Jensen will surprise people at MSI. I don't think he will be the best mid laner at MSI, but I don't think he will be the worst mid laner at MSI by any means. But yes, he is someone to judge because it's a hot topic. Maybe one more. We'll make it the magnificent number 7. Then we're going to get to our review of game number 1. How good is TL at adapting drafts and strategies during a series? How is TL's adaptation of pick ban during a best of series? We'll leave that as the last one. I think that's a really good one to bring up because this is the second best of series they played. They won the first best of series very easily against FlyQuest, which I was disappointed in. FlyQuest beat them in the second round and looked good doing it, but I think FlyQuest kind of went out with a whimper, which was disappointing for me. But they, this is a 5-game series. So adaptation is not something that TL has been forced to show before this series started. So I think this is a really nice group of 7 questions. I'm not going to return to it after every game, but definitely by the end of the series, we're going to go over these 7 points and try to come up with an updated, realistic expectation on TL based on what we've shared today, what we knew in the past, and what we know on a simple level for the other teams at the tournament. So, with that in mind, we're going to close a couple of tabs, and that means we get started on the games. So thank you very much to everyone joining me. 1,000 people here. Going to get started with Team Liquid versus TSM. Awesome stage. Do we have any wrestling fans in the chat? The reason why I asked that is you could see all the, on the left side of the screen, you could see all the lights of the phones going on and off. It reminded me of the fireflies from Bray Wyatt back in the day. It looked really cool. So that was pretty cool there. I always appreciate that sort of stuff. It's a big wrestling thing, but yeah, it's always cool to see the arena lit up. Kobe speaking. Kobe Freak and Azael. Definitely one of those casting dream teams out there. Now, it's been a while, so I'm going to have to remember all my hotkeys and stuff. I write them out. Let's go with increasing the speed. Now, you sound a little bit loud, Azael. Oh, no, you sound super loud. Let's see if I can give you the minimum sound. Oh, what kind of impact? I think that's the best I can do. Now, are we okay with voice sound here? Do I need to turn down a little bit? How are we doing here? How are we doing here? We happy with audio balance? Casting balance, it just wants to be kind of low, so I can always decrease it a little bit if you guys want. Well, I'm going to leave it just here, just because it's quite loud in my ears. But, all right, we'll talk over it. So, let's zoom through the draft a little bit. Wait. Click on this, click on that. Sorry, a bit out of practice with all the things. So, Team Liquid have side selection in game number 1. They choose blue side. We're on patch 9.6. So I've cast kind of the meta evolving in promotions in Korea, and that was a bit of a different meta. So I don't really have my head for where the meta is at on 9.6 and NA at this time, just given life has like kind of been in a weird order. TSM have to ban Tarek because Team Liquid showed they're willing to play it, and I guess it suggests that TSM isn't wanting to play it this series. The Jace ban is earned. I reviewed TL versus FlyQuest before this series, and in general, Impact was actually looking pretty good. Taking the carry side of matchups and got a little bit more investment than he did in their regular season game between these two teams, but not much more. But he was able to take the good side of a matchup and, at least do the minimum and win in CS and be a pressure point. And I guess the line for Impact is like he's never going to be the Shy. But if you think of another role player top laner who could play some Jace, you're thinking of Sword, who, was a pretty decent Jace outside of kind of botching a team fight and losing the game to Kingzone. And it feels like Impact's kind of in that band somewhere between like super high mechanical top laner that he's never going to be at this point in his career, pure role player that can play some carries for priority, and then there's a kind of generous area between the two where like how much can he do in a good matchup or how much can he survive in a bad matchup. And we definitely say he's better at surviving bad matchups than abusing good matchups, but you still need to be able to rate these things to understand how it will look against Wander, the Shy. Like there's going to be sometimes going to be counterpicked, and there's going to be some times where he can take the strongest available blind pick and do okay. And kind of where he's at in that kind of area is an interesting thing to rate, given that Impact is one of the players we're tracking. But first pick Galio, that's obviously super standard on the side of TL. Kalista priority and NA are going to be a bit lower. Kalista Galio available, but they're just going to go Sivir Galio. TL are very much saying hard team fight already with Galio Sivir in the first round. TSM is kind of drafting how I've been liking recently, where with Galio down, they pick, an answer to Galio in lane. You can go Vayne, but the Vayne priority in general around the world is going down a little bit because Vayne does some things well and struggles with other things. But you kind of want to take Morgana or Tahm Kench into Galio, right? Just to have an answer to 1.5 second hard CC in lane. They take the Tahm Kench, and they just take the strongest possible 2v2 Tahm Kench lane, which is Tahm Kench Varus. Varus, his ability to push up, harass at 575 range, have double ranged harass with Q and E, multiple different build paths that you can go to. Outside of like multiple assassins being locked in, Tahm Kench Varus is almost never abusable at any point in the game. It's a very standard 2v2 with a lot of power, and it has priority in most lane matchups. Like when your task is get priority on Varus, and Galio's already locked in, so you can't counterpick support that easily without flexing Galio, you're kind of up shit creek, right? You got some options, but they're really edge options, and they're not always in the meta. So often people will just say, okay, that's not going to be a priority lane, and try to play around it anyway. So it just ends up being the Galio Sivir after all. Oop. And so we end up with Jarvan Galio. So Team Liquid have already said we're team fight. Like, this comp can only team fight. There's no way to pivot from this being a team fight. Question in chat, Trueblood89. Have I watched the series already? I've watched game 1, but not to my memory, so I actually don't even remember what the drafts are for game 1, and I haven't watched game 2 through 5, but I know the results. So, TL say we're team fighting. And TSM from this point, like if we just freeze it here, which we've done, can do a lot of things. Like instantly this can become a Comet Varus poke comp, and you're just trying to use priority strong lanes to poke down the enemy, to get a gold lead, hit your timings, and then, well, never 3-item Sivir, never team fight, we're fine. But risky. You have to be, you kind of have a hard timer if you go full poke comp like Comet Varus. Comet Varus is the first thing we reviewed from TSM, ironically. Many moons ago, it was first round, I think, Sven on Comet Varus. It's probably still going to be team fight here because you can just go Blade the Ruin King Rageblade on hit Varus and shred a frontliner. But you can do a lot. And that's another reason why Tahm Kench Varus is strong is you now have a duo that could become a poke comp that effortlessly can go into a teamfight comp and that wins lane with priority in most cases and rotates first if you get the first turret down bot. So the reason why there's so much power in that draft choice. And just first round Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai Jarvan, expected to be the jungle matchup. I'm a really big fan on the Rek'Sai side of this matchup, and I know NA fans hate Jarvan because the Jarvan win rate, as you can see on screen right now, has been very low. But Rek'Sai and Jarvan are the standard jungle matchups. That's because both of them can gank at level 2. Both of them can have a lot of agency on one items. It's often Cinderhulk versus Warrior, but Jarvan can do both. With a Snowball go Warrior and blow up people, but largely will go Cinderhulk. And Cataclysm always does something. EQ always threatens something. And Rek'Sai's numbers are so highly tuned in the early game that she gets to be an early game jungle. Like, Rek'Sai is early game champion. Jarvan is much better over the course of a game because he has Cataclysm. And Cataclysm really strong against Varus, right? Because he has to flash, doesn't have a mobility skill. Like, Jarvan will always be relevant against Varus at any point in the game, up to, 94 minutes of the dream. But Rek'Sai sucks in the late game as a champion outside of Tremor Sense. So if her numbers are high enough in the early game, like a 4.75 AD ratio, and her reliability is high as it is when it comes to gank pressure, so assuming her numbers are decent, and Warrior Enchant's good, and Black Cleaver is good, she just needs Tremor Sense to be sort of relevant in the late game, and her early game is so good that while it's not a bridge, like she doesn't have a plateau where she's like, good, she's definitely great into, well, the Tremor Sense is a nice ability. She's really strong in the early game. She's very reliable because she doesn't have any skill shots outside of Q, so which you don't even need to hit most of the time. And her late game gives her vision that's not possible in the game. So that's just why there's no jungle champs to equate with these two that aren't conditional. Like, yes, you can Kindred into Rek'Sai, but then you kind of want Zillion, then you kind of don't have someone who can face check. Like, there's a lot of reasons that you don't go to Kindred. And then after that, Skarner is probably the best pick into the Rek'Sai Jarvan meta, especially Rek'Sai. But Skarner, some teams have a lot of bias against because he doesn't do a lot of damage. His skirmishing is very much, if I'm ahead of the play, I stun them for a second and hope my laner shows up till level 6. And yes, his level 6 is strong, but a lot of Skarner's power is in the mid game where the enemy's building QSSs and your gold lead is bigger or smaller than it appears in a good way for your team. But then Skarner's not so good in the ultra late game because he never really did damage. And when the gold, like the 3,900 gold for 3 QSSs is gone, then Skarner, when the relevance of that doesn't matter at really high gold values, then Skarner doesn't matter. And actually, NA going so long in their games with very low bloodiness means that Skarner, more often than not, doesn't get to have a big role in the game. Because, yeah, around 45 minutes, Skarner doesn't even have Tremor Sense. He just kind of ultra sucks as a champ. So, yeah, Rek'Sai versus Jarvan, enjoy it. You're going to get a lot at MSI. Like, those champions are right there. I assume Rek'Sai probably be highest contest rate, right? What do you guys think? Contest rate will be, of any champs at MSI, like Rek'Sai will be really high. Jarvan will be high. I think there'll be like a surprising, like there'll be a riser, like Rise himself, not a bad pun, but like Rise will be very high for contest. Someone rising might be like a Vlad, where Vlad was like a huge LCK champ, but then has started to spill into other regions. But I think that I think that it could go pretty close to like 95%, where Vlad has been like an 80% champion for a long time. Nautilus is a good one that people are talking about. Nautilus is clearly very good. Sylas, the last nerf really hurt Sylas. You can still run Sylas, and he still does the thing where you first pick him, then he's like, shit, now I can't really pick those ults, and like, where's he going? And yeah, his lane is decent, but his lane is nowhere near as good with the really long nerf onto the E. So I'd be surprised to see Sylas like auto 98% pick ban like he would have been before, but he will be played sometimes. Anyways, we'll go forward with this draft. So TSM, they've shown nothing. You know nothing about TSM right now and what their comp is going to be, but their bans are probably going to be the first time where TL kind of understands where TSM is going with their picks here. So we see a GP ban. That tells you that TSM want to win bot harder. Gangplank, as a counter pick in top lane, doesn't exist anymore, but he is picked into matchups that he can survive. So Kennen, for example, is a really good survive the Gangplank lane, where with oranges and then something like a Sterix Gauge, you don't die to Kennen, whatever build Kennen goes, unless Kennen goes on full-on hit build, and then you're like, well, we out teamfight this Kennen every time, so we don't care that much about how hard GP is losing. So this suggests that Broken Blade is thinking about Kennen, but also that TSM want to get some advantages around their bot lane because, you dog it through lane as GP and you ult bot lane if possible, to either set up a gank or to help with a turret dive, or you TP bot lane and you ult top lane to clear waves. So you want to play a outnumber centric style with GP most of the time, whether that's sending 3 people to take the enemy turret plates and then GP pulling back or TPing bot lane and using ult to either help with the 3 people or clear the wave up top side. So GP is like a map control champion that you as a ban, and it's a kind of Kennen coverage ban. Okay, so Aurelia banned, makes sense. Very strong flex champion for TSM. And then TL want a team fight. That's all we need to know. So they don't want to have lanes where they're going to really have to overforce team fights because they can't contain a lane. The dream from here is that you get good lanes around this that are competitive, and then you've got enough initiation that you're like, oh, we've got the items we want, we're fighting now. So the LeBlanc ban can mean a lot. For a lot of the season, this meant a Zoe coverage ban. Then Zoe started winning the matchup. Then Korea kind of got confused and it started going just the way of the better player. It is a kind of historic Jensen pick. But it's also a pick that can beat some side laners like Kennen, for example, if you just get big enough and just win side lanes. So LeBlanc ban's ban. And then Zillion. The Zillion ban here, to me, it's like it's a Bjergsen champ, and it's the champ that beat TL last time. But it's kind of a curious ban. Like, I think once you see Rek'Sai, your threat of Zillion being such a valuable champion goes down a bit. I don't really see it. But regardless, TSM get to this point where they have a lot of different options. Winning the game through Broken Blade, who I thought had a really good series against C9, is a very viable way when you feel like Broken Blade versus Impact is like the least like for like. Like Sven and Doublelift, both excellent AD carries. Jensen and Bjergsen, people have a lot of opinions on these two, but it's not like there's a huge gulf in skill between the two. Like, you could say Bjergsen's better and always has been. You're probably right to some degree, but it's not like they're very similar. That they have like very similar effective champions, I believe at least. But Broken Blade looks best on carries, and Impact looks best on kind of containment and team fighting. So because Broken Blade and Impact excel at different points in the game, I think giving Broken Blade red side counterpick, if you're on red side, and remember, they chose blue side, so they got to get something out of the side they're on. I think counterpicking Impact makes a lot of sense. These, you got to love all these hovers, man. Sven is an interesting guy. Like, I've known him quite well when he was on G2. Very dry sense of humor, very matter of fact. Like, he's not a memer and a shit talker usually, but I appreciate the amount of hovers going on in this one. And they lock Zoe. And remember, our analysis was this comp can do a lot of things. Well, now we know that their sieging is going to be god tier. Like, at this point, you're worried as TL because the enemy comp tells you they're going to play 4-1. This is an amazing 4-1 comp. Where around turrets, Zoe and Varus, throw down their harass, and then you have a counterpick top laner that Broken Blade plays really well that will have priority, and the enemy team has to engage on a timer, otherwise all the chip damage, the machine gun takes down their turrets, and they lose the game anyway. So this is a really, you're already, under fire as TL, because now you're like, all right, Impact, what can you play that definitely can't be hard counterpicked? And that's hard when they usually don't give a lot of resources to Impact. I think Impact performed very well against FlyQuest. I said that a couple of times. But this is stressful. A very stressful part as a coach on the blue side. Into Zoe. I already know they pick Heimerdinger in this game. But I'm thinking about... Because you kind of, at this point, have to team fight. If you're TL... You don't want it to be about TSM's comp, because that's what you never want. You never want to have lost the game, control of the game at picks bans. So you want the game to be about your comp, because the game is so much easier to play when you're doing what your comp does best, and the enemy team's like, shit, we have to try to deal with that. So already they're like, all right, well, we need to make it more about team fights, or we need to purely negate any hope TSM have of flexing on us in lanes. They've already lost bot lane 2v2. Remember that. So let's see how they fight for it. So they go Heimerdinger. The Heimerdinger pick here is one that was played by Radha multiple times in LMS. I was doing my research of LMS, mostly to check in on Radha. He was the old Griffin mid laner, was replaced by Chovy when Chovy came of age in 2017 in March of last year. Radha's a little bit older. Not the best laner. He was kind of a Galio Vladimir mid lane player. But he played a lot of champions out of meta. He definitely had his own read on the game. And he played Heimerdinger into Zoe twice during LMS, and that made me very interested, thinking about the reasons as to why. The idea is that you want to push in and you want to take lane control with your turrets to give the Zoe almost no space to open up for paddle stars. Make her much more conspicuous. And then if you can position your turrets in certain ways, yes, there's AoE on paddle star. So if you just stand directly behind a turret, you do get hit by the paddle star, but not always the case with the mega turret. You can block paddle stars very easily, and if you guys have been playing the game a long time, you remember how next level it was in 2012 to put down a turret when Blitzcrank was coming to hook, because they'd hook the turret, right? And people would do that against Rammus powerballing in just to interrupt him trying to come for you. So Rather played it in the LMS a couple of times. So on paper, you can kind of understand why against Zoe. You just want to pressure it in lane. Push in, you can block abilities. But it's not that easy. You can't just reactively queue a paddle star because you will take AoE damage off of the paddle star. But there is definitely some merit to it. So it was cool to see them pick this one up. But if I do see Jensen, I think TL coming to Korea now, right? I'll ask him about it. I wonder if it was him watching LMS or the analyst talking about it or completely unrelated to Rather. I'll try to find that information out and get back to you guys on that one. But I did tweet about it at the time. And then the GP ban ups Kennen value, and Kennen already is kind of the ultimate blind pick top laner. So Kennen is what you would expect here. It is taken. Impact's played it in his career multiple times, so that part is fine. You would love a split push here. You want something that can scale through the Kennen and then answer him in the side lane. And if it has teamfight impact too, that's like gravy. But you want to answer the Kennen. A lot of people would take Aurelia. People were actually messaging about this. I saw a Reddit thread where people were like, oh, Aurelia versus Kennen matchup. Like, this used to be a famous Aurelia scaling counterpick matchup where in the last Kennen meta in Season 3, Aurelia built Wit's End and would just win the lane. And while Aurelia's different, she's not that different. And she was changed to be more about on hits with the amount of pure attack speed she picks up. So Aurelia does really well into Kennen. So yes, it was banned in this game by Team Liquid against TSM. I'm just talking about the matchup as a whole. So in this case, when you're thinking of something into the Kennen, Vladimir is a champion who does really well into Kennen, especially historically. I felt the lane matchup's going worse these days with the new runes coming in. After runes reforged, I feel like Kennen actually does better, it feels like, than any previous time this matchup happens. But Kennen has options against Vladimir. Could go full on hit build, can go Gunblade and last longer. But in general, Vlad eventually, just purely as a champion, outscales almost everyone in the 1v1. And is also a backup team fighter. So as TSM saying, this champion does well against Kennen in the 1. And look, if we actually have to 5v5, I know it happens sometimes with Sivir, Kennen, Galio, Jarvan on the enemy team. Like, you can't disengage every engage. Your flash cooldown will be down at some point. Vladimir can also teamfight and be a teamfight win condition in and of himself. So Vlad versus Heimerdinger, for example, is pretty damn good at the late game because Heimer can only stasis and doesn't really offer too much else when Vlad comes in. So don't mind this choice. It's one that Broken Blade has played well. And TSM have shown more investment into Broken Blade's lane than Impact has gotten from TL historically. So TL's draft mostly about the team fight. Heimerdinger can be a team fight champ, but it also gets priority on Zoe the few times I've seen the matchup. And again, Jensen's coming in probably with, like, how many games of Heimerdinger could he have played before this? I would say like 5 scrims and maybe 15 games recently, right? We're talking about. So it's definitely, to some degree, like a new pick. Some would call this cheese. Some people get really mad if you call it cheese. 2 scrims is what I'm reading, which makes sense. Broken Blade isn't a rookie. He played TCL before. For major region qualifications, TCL is considered the players are still considered a rookie in League of Legends if they haven't played in a major region. So Sword, for example, was a rookie on Griffin in summer of last year because the TCL is not a major region, even though he played a couple of games, like one split in the TCL. So I agree with you, especially by like football or soccer standards. Broken Blade wouldn't be a rookie, but I'm just using the League of Legends established definition. And if we have a decision as like a whole kind of collective that's what is and isn't a rookie, or Riot decides to define it, will change. So we can finally get into the game here. Team fight, Team Liquid, but with the Heimerdinger pick, which is pretty hype in the mid lane to try to get pressure on the Zoe. And then loving these stingers. You guys would have noticed these ones, right? These are for sure. These stingers after pick ban are NA production being inspired by China stingers. If you guys remember Worlds 2017, they would always have the little reels before games where they would have like kind of hype like dragons and the players and stylized and stuff. Like these like between pick ban and in-game stingers are definitely an homage to that. So I'm happy to see them picking up production cues from other regions. It's cool. It adds a little bit of flavor to them. TSM, 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 they say. Alright, so let's try and work out where these lanes are at and where the early game is at between Team Liquid and TSM game number 1. So TSM made it onto the Rift and went for just a very shallow information here. They're not trying to invade. Level 1 is a little bit scary to face check TL, just because Galio is very strong at level 1, and Heimerdinger is probably not going to take Grenade, right? He's probably already revealed that he has turrets down in the mid lane, but whenever you see AoE CC, it's a bit of a worry. There's no Brahms or Olafs in this game that are really the level 1 winners. Someone here made the point. It seems really condescending to basically say your region doesn't matter because it's bad in terms of Broken Blade Rookie. It's not to do with how good or bad it is. They're not considered a region that gets auto seeds into Riot events. Like there's major regions that get the auto seed in, and those are the regions that seem to be like the ones where when you debut, if you haven't played in one of those regions, you're a rookie. Like I agree that it's kind of a weird system and maybe a relic of the kind of international wildcard days, but that is just the definition as it is currently. No level 1 invades here. Again, no Braum Olaf makes it a little bit tricky to gauge strength, like in terms of like for both teams once they get into the game. Like, okay, we're decent, but we'll see what the changes are here. I think TSM really wanted Varus Tahm Kench to get to lane first. Sivir has a really good push. Like as Sivir Galio, you can take Q on both and then shove the lane super hard. And if Varus Tahm Kench loses control of level 1, you have a lot of a struggle here. So even in a blind sense, TL would not be surprised to see TSM enter lane early and not give a leash purely because Varus Tahm Kench at level 1 sucks compared to Varus Tahm Kench at level 2. Like Varus Tahm Kench is the god tier bot lane level 2 onwards. At level 1, you don't have lane priority because you don't have, when you're trying to establish lane priority, you have to take Q on Tahm Kench. Otherwise, you don't really have the ability to get lane priority because you can't just take W and like eat the first minion that comes and spit it out to help the push because, you know, the cooldown's up to the cooldown range it is now. You take Q usually for lane presence or you want to melee walk into the enemy minions. And so you don't get the devour position you do from level 2 onwards. You know, we saw this in the promotion tournament where we bigged up how strong Varus Tahm Kench is from level 2. And it was attacked by Lucian Braum at level 1. So just given all that kind of information overload I'm giving you, given that Zven and Smoothie picked, you know, the winning 2v2 duo, and they know how this lane plays out, you can't really afford to give a leash to the Rek'Sai. So you kind of have to hit the minion wave early to fight for that level 2 push and not allow Sivir Galio to shove. Therefore, Rek'Sai's almost certainly starting top. It's a very like, kind of long-winded point, but that's the thought process that both teams go through to know something that wasn't gained through vision. Smithy started sweeper, walks down, taken out. Doesn't get the ward, but knows he's spotted, which of course is enough of the information. Jarvan is a machete jungler, also has much less AoE than a Rek'Sai, who has kind of the Q more often than not to just splash damage onto things, so can't go for the Krugs into Scuttle contest as easily as Rek'Sai. Like Rek'Sai can take red Krugs and then go to a Scuttle if she doesn't know the enemy is bot side. If she knows, she can go to 3 camp clear, get level 3, then show up at Scuttle. And if the enemy Jarvan goes for a double Scuttle, well, it's level 3 Rek'Sai. So you're actually going to have a level lead on that and either kill him and take the Scuttle or just get the Scuttle and the Jarvan backs off. Jarvan would love to do the same and just power farm the Krugs into the Scuttle and get there maybe 10 seconds later, but can't happen because of the lack of AoE. And this is the lane state you want. So you want your triangle. Freak. So this is a really, really old story, but I used to watch Freak stream in 2010 when it was on Justin TV. There was 2 people that streamed that were pretty notable back then on Justin TV. They were Freak and Larius. Larius actually did a AMA on Reddit about being an emissary of the league a couple of weeks ago. But Freak loved to play Heimerdinger, and he talked a lot about the triangle of turrets. And basically the advantage here is you have some lane control. Your foremost turret is the one that's going to meet the minion wave first. The triangle is one where Heimerdinger can stand in the middle, and from all angles of approach, an enemy is going to be aggroing the turret. And also, if you're at that spot, you're out of Paddlestar AoE range, so you're not going to be harassed at all. So it's all about trying to claim as much lane control as possible with the Heimerdinger. And you want Bjergsen to be kind of, if you drew a horizontal line in front of his turret or on his turret, like you want him to be stuck around there, because then whenever he tries to Paddlestar, he's going to be doing it from far back. It's going to be an awkward spot. The gank paths are a little bit tricky. Yes, Rek'Sai has flexible pathing, but the whole idea of Donger versus Zoe is to have a pick into the Zoe where Zoe can't just push and then put down a lane ward, stand in the river brush where she gets river control, and then as the minion wave walks up, walk in with a Paddlestar and either push the lane or harass the enemy and push the lane, or just harass the enemy. You can't do the river brush camping, pull down the Paddlestar, push the lane priority that Zoe's known for against Heimerdinger with his turrets up like this. In the early game, before levels, while Vlad around level 9 with cooldowns gets better against Kennen, the ultra early game is not great, right? So bit of priority top, Heimerdinger able to get priority mid. So they've subverted the Varus Tahm Kench duo that was picked to, the priority draft, the 4-1 that TSM's eventually loading up to, by getting 2 winning lanes, at least early game, which is good stuff from the TL coaching staff. I think they prepared for this series really well. With the caveat of, how good a Donga player are you? Which I think we'll see very soon was not the best. Watching the replay here, watching the mini-map. In the bot lane, so what happened before this play? So, if we watch the bot lane, able to push in a wave is TL with the Galio and Sivir, so the WQ spam is enough. And as the minion wave is being met by Sivir, they don't know if Galio's in the river brush or if he's warding. Of course, we get the confirmation that he's warding, and Varus Tahm Kench just don't actually have the chance to harass. So it's actually just an all-in coming through from Core J. He even flashes. Does he get the health bar confirmation? Yeah, I think he does, right? Yeah, he gets the health bar confirmation. He sees 300 health, and he says, why not try it? Ends up being a trade of flashes. But Arcadian's flash being down is so insanely huge for Jensen. Because now, if he's sitting in his mid lane triangle of turrets, he's actually really safe, from a Rek'Sai gank. It's not like those turrets blow him up. We all know it's not the evolved turret damage, but there's a lot more opportunity cost to coming in to gank the Heimerdinger now. And, Rek'Sai, super strong at ganking pre-6 because of Flash on Burrow. Flash is gone. So CoreJJ used priority to push up to get this, and yes, they lose minion wave control in bot, but that was inevitably going to happen against Varus Tahm Kench. Doublelift's too greedy here. So Doublelift pushed in the minion wave as we knew, and it got this free harass. They know that the Galio's flash is down, and Doublelift just needs to go hug the turret for a bit, but he really wants this melee minion, and for the melee minion he takes, you know, 900 damage to make that happen, which is not worth it. Drawing out the exhaust is not a big enough cooldown either, so small mistake there, but overall really like the move from TL because it really shuts down the amount of agency that Rek'Sai has. Now Arcadian is more going to be thinking about farming. The moment that that's true, that's big news for the Kennen who wants to get Kleptoprocs, the Heimerdinger who can only really play this lane pushing in. If you lose your 3 turrets as Heimerdinger and you lose wave control, you know, and the enemy Zoe hits like level 9 with a Lost Chapter in blue, suddenly Heimerdinger can't keep Zoe under wraps with those low cooldowns, and suddenly he's just that little rodent that gets blown up by one Paddlestar combo. So control of minion waves, tempo of minion waves, and I know tempo is a overused term, but the ability to push and make the enemy accountable is very important for TL's draft as they try to scale to late. They want this game to be about them team fighting when they decide rather than, you know, TSM overtaking the game. So things like that where they have control and the enemy's gank tools are down is really good news for TL. So the Rek'Sai no longer feeling comfortable to gank is Arcadian, so you can see much more looking at counter jungling. And remember, so Arcadian like gives up ganking after losing his flash. Flash is still about 3 minutes away. And so he's like, okay, all my camps are down. I'm really scared about Heimerdinger hitting 6 and turning around a gank in mid lane, so I'm not going to go there. The Vladimir's not that strong on top. I'm not going to go there. Kill pressure for Varus Tahm Kench. It's okay, but Sivir's not an easy gank. Got those flashes down. He finishes his path topside, does the Rek'Sai. And if you think about all the things he can't really do, all he can do is counter jungle. And so that's why the invade the enemy jungle, get information, see Gromp is up, and then consider tunneling over is what Arcadian does. And it does mean that perhaps he can come back behind the Kennen when Vladimir hits level 6. But it's also the only path up for Xmithy. And this is a path that Arcadian went into because he was pressured to go into it. He lost his flash, he ran out of jungle camps, didn't want a happy foot around his jungle, and his flash being down means that going for a true gank in mid lane wasn't on the cards. This is purely a byproduct of Core JJ's invade early on the Galio. Like Core JJ pushing in early and blowing the flash. I might have said Smoothie. Sometimes I get confused. But Core JJ going in and blowing Arcadian's flash eventually leads to Arcadian going in too far and then, you know, being collapsed on. So really good play by Core JJ earlier. Got them a lot going on in this early game. And then from there, Arcadian, who is, you know, a rookie, not a rookie, but, you know, a rookie to a finals game, a younger player. He's not a veteran like Sven Bjergsen Smoothie. You know, makes the best play on your first thought, which is, I guess I invade and, you know, maybe I can get behind the Kennen. But it's also one that he was herded towards. And I feel like players who are new to final stages are the most likely to go for the first thing they think of because they're nervous, right? They're like, okay, I can't do this, let's just do this, you know, okay, breathe, it's my first final. And then the veterans are the ones who communicate, his flash is down, he can't do that, we can take advantage of him. And that felt like just some, you know, veterancy shown by TL and Flexed, and certainly veterancy is what they have as a squad. Moment he's spotted here, he's in a weird spot. He could have taken the blast plant, but that does unburrow you, right? As far as I'm aware. It doesn't do that and just ends up getting an awkward spot as Arcadian. Broken Bay gets a really nice. I don't know what starts this. I guess Impact's at kind of 2/3 health. He approaches the minion wave and surprised that Broken Blade has so much wave control to get this huge free harassment onto Impact, but Cooldown getting lower on the transfusion. This is when the matchup starts to go towards Vlad, as Kennen doesn't have any innate sustain. And that's why Vlad used to come level 9, out-trade a Kennen, purely because it gets to the point where Vlad presses Q, Kennen presses Q auto or auto W, and Vlad wins the health trade. There's no more, Will of the Ancients to really amplify that like there once was, but that's the basic tenor behind it. It's why we see this Kennen build become the standard. If you see Kleptomancy, Kennen, very heavily expected to be Gunblade almost every time. While Gunblade doesn't give you the same teamfight guarantee of the proto belt to get in position, the Gunblade gives you sustain in lanes, so that lanes like, for example, the Vladimir, who in the past would just eventually, Kennen is forced to give up minion wave control because he can't just lightning rush through the minion wave, W it, and then look for a teleport because he just gets harassed and has no health. The Gunblade lets you sustain through the minion wave and through your harass to stay in lane topped up at higher health values, but also it may not be the reposition proto belt, but it's still a slow to help with your team fighting as well. So it's not as much into ability, power, and reposition, but overall it feels like with the current power level of items, makes the most sense as a laning item for the Kennen. So that's what we see from Kennen so far, and that's an explanation as to why we see a lot more Gunblade Kennen. Turret diving Kennen. Tricky. Now, Arcadian's coming in, and you notice the item disadvantage. Very rarely will a Rek'Sai have an item disadvantage on a Jarvan. A Jarvan has a completed Cinderhulk. Arcadian doesn't even have Caulfield's Warhammer. Caulfield's Warhammer versus Cinderhulk is much more possible. It's more expensive to complete the item. It's given the normal parts you have in your inventory, it's more likely that you have to sit on a kind of 1250 gold value for Cinderhulk, but Caulfield's Warhammer, you buy more things along the way. It's not often this happens, and then Arcadian comes in. You're turret diving a Kennen, so the only person who can reset aggro reliably is, both of them can, right? They can both reset aggro, so this is definitely a possible, but the timing on the stun is always the thing that's important. So let's watch this slow to watch the aggro decision here, because normally you'll say, okay, Vlad should take aggro because he can drop it, but actually Rek'Sai should always take aggro first because she can drop aggro, but Vlad can drop aggro on a lethal shot. And Rek'Sai can only drop aggro before she ults. So she's not going to end this gank with the ult. She's going to have it somewhere mid during the particular turret dive. So you want to open with Rek'Sai, have her take first aggro, which they do, and then ult, it goes on to Vlad, he gets the kill and then pulls away. That's the way this is done, but it's with less items than you would usually expect. Good flash from Impact to get them under turret. You want to drag people into this narrow choke under the turret as much as possible whenever you're playing solo queue, because then they're guaranteed to take those bonus huge damage turret shots. Drags it there. Watch the replay. So this is the mistake. If you watch it in slow motion, so far correct. Rek'Sai started with aggro, knows that the moment that she ults, Broken Blade will take aggro. So Broken Blade actually pulls very early, and Arcadian takes an extra shot. Watch the turret, remember? So we're going to watch the turret all the way through. Rek'Sai takes first turret shot, pops the second turret shot. So no damage is taken on the second turret shot because you are untargetable during the Rek'Sai ultimate, just like you are during pull. So no damage taken on the second shot. It goes to Broken Blade. There's the turret shot. Now, here's my heavy opinion as we watch the replay. So after the heal, let's count the chocolate bars, as I call them, the health bars here. 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 750 health, right? Turret shot comes in around 500. So the next turret shot is not going to kill the Vladimir. But Broken Blade pulls that one, so the turret instantly goes on to Arcadian, and then he takes the extra shot where he dies. So I think everyone in chat can probably agree, especially if you go over this at your own pace. Vlad can take an extra shot there. The shot actually hasn't even left the turret when he pulls. And between those two things, Rek'Sai takes an extra shot and they get out. If they perfectly juggled that, they both get out, even at those item breakpoints, and Kennen dies. Instead, it's a little bit wonky, maybe because these are the two players who are like new to a big final, like an LCS final, and they don't get the clean kill. Now, the clean kill for Vladimir here is huge, by the way, or even onto Rek'Sai to stabilize, because of where the matchup usually goes in the 1v1. In this particular case, they don't get that. It ends up being a trade, and that just means that Kennen's closer and closer to Gunblade. And while it's not Akali levels are bad, like when Kennen gets the Gunblade, he's not Akali with Gunblade, where you're like, you know, how can I possibly lane against this champion? You can still lane against the Kennen pretty comfortably. It's still a lot of... It does weather the storm very, very well. Now, people are talking about he would have got stunned again. We can watch the replay on that. You guys might be right on that one. Let's go and confirm the turret dive scenario. We'll get there. Oh, we're going the wrong way. Silly me. Sorry about that. We were fast forwarding when we should have been rewinding. I'm going to watch the replay. Come on, I'm back to this. I'm new to this. I'm trying. We'll get there. So let's watch the predicament here. First stun. Okay. I can see it. Because he has the two marks, as you see. I think it's fine. Yeah, that's fair. In hindsight, then it's more about the item timing than anything. Like, it's really tricky to fully know what to do here. Like, you can juke it there, but I think saying you should have juked it Broken Blade is, like, harsh overall. Yeah, I guess that's fine then. I guess it went the way you might expect on that one. I can't really blame anyone there from all of it. The only reality is that the item timings on the Rek'Sai are behind. The damage thus doesn't register as hard, and when you have missing health damage, the warrior and champ being there means almost certainly you get the kill and get out. But given that extra information and the pointing out of the shuriken, yeah, that's about fine. People, if you do ultra zoom, yes, like technically the shuriken had passed his model, but that's definitely too much hindsight and slowing down. I'm all for breaking balls, but that's too much breaking balls there. So, game state here. Kennen has 2 kills, which means fast Gunblade, which means Broken Blade probably can't take as much control of the lane as he wants. And while Smithy hasn't gone top, he's still sticking a control ward. He still is able to get vision control top side, and this is better than a lot of the predicaments that Impact was facing in previous series. It's also notable that, you know, he's playing much more the Kennens and the Jaces in recent series, and those are most likely champions that transfer very well to what the expected pulls are coming to MSI. So Arcadian just working. Right now, the battle lines are drawn pretty succinctly from draft to later in the game. River control bot side for Sven Smoothie, for Varus Tahm Kench. They have control over the lane. They went for the early Varus Tahm Kench, which is their only on-paper winning lane early in the game. Broken Blade probably now needs an item to fully supplant a lead over Impact, especially if the Gunblade is done on next back. There's always been pushed in, but not to any relevant disadvantage. Hasn't lost a turret plate. Jensen isn't up on CS. We'll inspect some of the Heimerdinger mechanics, but I remember Jensen not being super on ball with some of his plays. Rek'Sai, as you noticed, was actually looking to come up one of the few times there were no turrets up in the mid lane, but turrets back up. Therefore, Arcadian backs away. They spot the Rift Herald being started here. Ah, it's just the scuttle. Actually can't tell. He wasn't able to tell in this case if it was the Rift Herald or the scuttle. He just assumed it was the scuttle because it was moving a bit fast, and he was correct there. So doesn't end up being the biggest thing ever. Control wards from TSM are bot side, so they can't also take control of topside river without a full Abyssal Voyage play that they didn't get. Sven was bot lane, so given all of that, the game so far has made a lot of sense. You can't control all sides of the map at once, especially when both bot laners are rotating through and trying to back up the jungle, so the Rift Scuttle goes down. The Rift Herald hasn't been started yet, but it's definitely under threat. The cannon's pushing in, the Vlad's on a recall. It's hard. No one has forward vision, so kind of situations like this from the TL perspective are awkward. You took down the Rift Scuttle. You know you got it. You assume Tahm Kench is roaming down bot lane. Some teams would just start the Rift Scuttle now because Vladimir is on a very clear item timing, and Impact is coming back with Gunblade. And I actually think that's the right way to go if you keep eyes on the Varus in the laning phase. So instead of pathing downwards, as you see Smithy doing, you could definitely start up Rift Scuttle. But the counter reason not to do that is maybe you communicate with your mid laner and you say, Jensen, I'm going to go for Scuttle. And Jensen says, well, I have no refillable, no pots, I'm less than half health, and I've lost lane control in mid. And Tahm Kench is missing. And if mid lane can't push up or get priority like we saw from the Hybridinger in the early game, then it's scarier to take the Rift Herald. Also, Rift Herald is super high value for TSM who wants to play a siege style. They'd love to crack early first turret, get the gold onto Zoe Varus, roll up to turrets, and to start it being about their siege, how strong their siege is, and already start kind of baiting engages from TL before there's 3 items on server. So given all of that, if you start the Rift Herald, the enemy, hits one more Paddle Star on Jensen, then shows up as an outnumber onto the Rift Herald, takes the Rift Herald from you, which happens all the time, right? One team starts Rift Herald, can't finish it, the enemy team takes it. Then turret plates are down, turrets are closer to being cracked, and the game plan of 4-1 is closer to being enacted by TSM. So that's one of the other reasons why Smithy might not start the Herald here. I very much understand Herald start or no Herald start, and if you ask me to be super, okay, a card's on the table, what should you do? Jensen losing lane control in mid and not having any control of the lane makes me feel like it is a little bit too risky to take Rift Herald unless you feel like that's the only win condition you have in the early game. So hard decision here for TL as to what to do. But you're hoping that if we had to listen in, there'd be a lot of open and honest comms around all those variables about what to think about, what to do, what to not do. These are the sort of things pro players need to always be discussing. Kills have definitely helped cement this goalie, but Klepto also. Taking Klepto in a range matchup. Not everyone does this against the Vlad, but I guess with Gunblade, the Gunblade is another reason why Klepto is more viable, because you're not going on hit. No other keystone is a must against a Vladimir or a must for Kennen. And getting early gold and continue to trade with the Vampiric Scepter into Bilgewater means you can take a more active get in range of Vladimir's Q than you could before. And some turret plates here. So this top lane is going really well. It's a really good game for Impact and how he's played it out. But also a team game on Core JJ blowing the enemy Rek'Sai's flash and Rek'Sai's mistake around the top side. The moment you see Impact being able to harass, leave lane to harass, come back to lane, and take the most aggressive route to poke out Broken Blade, lets you know that Kennen hasn't started losing this lane by any means. So Rift Herald again being leashed. Let's see who the leash done. So the leash is this time. It's done by TSM on a Broken Blade recall timing. Now, he has a very direct ward to teleport to, which is the ward on top of the Herald. But TL, understandably, will want to contest for this. This is actually a pretty tricky one to get without an outnumber, but that's what TSM have. let's watch when Varus Tamkench leave lane. So the moment that this happens and the Rift Herald is being leashed, Varus Tamkench start to walk up. Sven gives him two. So Sven first is walking all the way up. Then he knows the wave is coming in. He's hoping the action will stop. Then he goes back to coming up again. So it is Sven showing that they're going to be as a 5 there first. And so if you get there first as 5, there's no way for Sivir to answer this without teleport. She has a defensive teleport options. There is actually a way for everyone to be in position for a full-on Rift Herald fight. Now, at the item breakpoints right now, just Essence Reaver on Sivir versus the Varus with Blade. I would take Varus with Blade for sure. Broken Blade doesn't have a full item yet. So Kennen and Vlad is kind of more of a line ball than you might expect, but small advantages to Kennen. Heimerdinger is very good if you're coming to him, but not so good if you're actually kiting back. So if TL can actually kind of kite the Rift Herald back a bit, and Jensen can get behind Xmithie and Impact, there's a lot of ability to do damage here. But if it's a bit more unorganized and people coming with TPs late all over the place, extended skirmishes where Bjergsen will do best. So all that being summated lets you know there's a lot happening here about where these teams are strong and weak in and outnumber. It also is a bit of a moot point when you just TP in. Abyssal Voyage in, and TP hasn't been used just yet. So when you're coming from different directions and Bjergsen can cut people, able to cut the Galio, Sven and Smoothie in range, and it seems like Xmithie and Acadian into a smite fight here. These fights are so stressful. There's so much is happening in them. So a lot happens in this fight. We're going to go over and rewind it. So we already saw the paddle start, and TSM are using their line skill shots to stop people from getting in to contest this. Jensen gets ulted. The Trouble Bubble is used. None of these to do damage to contest a smite. So neither Bjergsen nor Sven are stopping the smite from coming down. They're just kind of isolating away Jensen and Kojak. It's a pretty good flash by Jensen to actually get behind his front line like we talked about. Heimerdinger desperately needs to be behind a front line or his turrets, and his turrets aren't set up. So smart. There's no way for... He either has to fully back off of a fight or come to this area. TP's coming in. Now, the TP spot is pretty awkward from Double Lift because Bjergsen and Sven are together, but the Galio can potentially try to slow these two down with an AoE taunt. Cannon ults. They're very much just controlling space, and the amusing thing is that so many people on the top side are buying time for their carries to get there, but Double Lift's teleporting. Sven and Bjergsen are kind of thinking about gatekeeping people out of the fight, and TL is the closest to having damage dealers on top of the objective. So there's a lot happening. It's a very disorganized fight. And eventually, Xmithie's controlling the river. TSM are trying to invade onto the blue side that TL's kiting back to. So TL just in general control the battlefield a little bit more. And then just lots of small calls, like Impact super low, probably going to die. Broken Blade chasing after him, but going to die in answer for that. Double Lift's teleport, like we talked about, was too aggressive, and Sven and Bjergsen were able to be played together. But Sven and Bjergsen controlled people getting into the fight, but didn't actually control where the fight was, and that's why the Rift Scuttle goes the way of TL. Watch Xmithie at the end here. What a monster. I didn't even see this when it was live. Xmithie actually flashes to get the Rift Herald. What a beast. Like, he's definitely dead here. He is never going to be able to survive as Cinderhulk Jarvan with no damage backup. Like, you don't flash here to get away from anything. You just flash to get the Rift Herald. That was really nicely done. So, TL get the Rift Herald as the team fighting comp, which suggests that they will be able to get more early control of waves than they would have before that. Also, the other thing to consider here is that TSM really, really wanted to either pick up the Rift Herald or have it not taken because they just wanted to play under turrets, right? They wanted to siege. So being able to take this Rift Herald is really big for TL playing into their win condition of the game going longer. However, at the end of the day, TSM are slowed down by this. Kills go the way of their carries. And it's not like the late game is purely TLs. Like, I found it really hard to equate Vladimir games because I always give Vladimir a lot of credit going into a late game. But usually when it's Vladimir and 4 champions that aren't as strong in the team fight usually, you don't feel like Vladimir can swing the fight alone. But the perfect Vladimir fight he does. And that's kind of the struggle, right? Like, in general, I pick TL most of the time in a 5v5. Yet, Vladimir could carry. And, yep, people are starting to come along and join me on the Vladimir is super overpowered hype train. Full-powered MSI, baby. We're going to have a whole lot of Vlad. Interesting fight. It's so tricky to know, like, to say what should happen from here onwards. Because there's validity into what Bjerg and Sven are doing together. They're not fighting behind a front line, but they're so strong as a duo that they're able to get a lot of value playing backside of the fight. But just given the map terrain isn't predictable terrain, given that it isn't the usual way fights will go out, they lose the Rift Herald, which they definitely don't feel great about. We got a lot of replays. We're going straight into a second fight. So let's understand this. They do a trade here. So Broken Blade's the only top lane that's going to get to this fight, which means a TL contest it late, which is what you have to do here with an outnumbered scenario. Impact has TP. Does he have TP wards? He has decent TP wards. So TL could fight this. It is a Cloud Drake, and in the end, it just ends up being a fast Secure. So TL did have some way to contest this. Broken Blade would probably have gotten there first, but the teleport from the cannon wouldn't have been that far outnumbered. It's a responding objective, but it's one that you're not too stressed about as TL because you get a turret anyway. So I think Cloud for turret trade is fine. Now TL is just jamming the Rift Herald as fast as possible. This is, again, a different type of Rift Herald than we've had to equate in previous weeks, because a lot of our Rift Heralds are pre-14 minutes, just trying to get turret gold, you know, plate gank, I guess you would call it, getting 2 plates. Usually when it's this sort of Rift Herald, you want extensive vision behind the pit. Usually you hold on to Rift Herald for a lot longer to make that happen. It seems like they're just desperate to break bot lane because they want to put double lift and core JJ in mid lane. Sivir is one of the best champions post Essence Reaver to put mid lane because you can just wave clear away and have no real mana concerns with that. And also core JJ can respond to other areas of the map with his Galio ult, which is more of a global from the mid lane. However, Heimerdinger is not the best champion to play in a side lane without teleport, and it is cleanse Heimerdinger. So it's definitely a kind of cost-benefit analysis being done. I'm actually going to turn on the light because it's getting late in Korea. Oh, give the camera a second there. But they don't put in deep vision to make this play happen. So they don't actually have the usual ward you want to make this Rift Herald. But usually if you want to jam the Rift Herald to take bot lane out of turret, you put down the ward, which is basically like up and left from where Tahm Kench is on the screen right now to threaten a teleport from the cannon. They go for the much more shallow ward put down by Xmithy that again cannon could TP to. But if you TP there, you don't actually get a flank off because the enemy gets eyes on it, they back away, and you don't have a way to stop the retreat. So this is pretty much trying to brute force jam down the Rift Herald. And it's kind of a, you know, it's a fast, it's definitely a fast skipping steps Rift Herald play that in previous season would be heavily criticized. Yeah. Rift Herald works anyway. They get the turret. Able to start getting Sivir to the mid lane as she moves towards second Zeal items. And now TL's the ones who, despite not having the Zoe Varus comp, if they can keep playing the game at their speed, they're going to be pretty comfortable with where they're going this game in terms of team fighting with the Sivir in particular. Yeah, Heimerdinger right now still not caught. I guess still on a back timing. Hasn't picked up blue buffs, so the Dinger hasn't actually rotated through. So in the end, it's just a turret. Doesn't really change the game state. Bjergsen's actually the one in the side lane for now. So many mid-game spikes. Like we're going to have, double pen cannon. Probably going to be double pen Bjergsen so soon on this Zoe. There's a lot of strong people with deletion damage on the Rift. But Impact has a lot of control over this lane. Like, Broken Blade's actually pretty happy about where he's at. Nice little poke onto the cannon. A lot about setup here. Both these teams, if they're going to fight for an objective, need a lot of setup for it. If you're forced to walk through Chains of Corruption Trouble Bubble, then TSM can just get a kill before a team fight starts, and then you add that to a Vladimir flank, like, it's all over, right? Meanwhile, TL, they want to put down turrets to control space, and then Galio taunt, or the turret threat that you're going to be under, and the potential for a cannon flank. So in the mid game, I mean, there's really not that much difference between Cannon and Vladimir because Vlad doesn't have super high AP and 45% CDR to get the extra rounds of damage that AP Cannon can't do. Like, AP Cannon doesn't have the second and third Tides of Blood AoE damage. That ends up being the kind of big thing that Vladimir provides as the game goes late enough, and it's why he becomes that like late game raid boss. I call him like Malphite Orianna in a single champion with how his team fights usually go. You get the poke out in the mid lane, as we see. And finally, it's like the first time they can even set up for a siege, TSM, is around the 20-minute mark. Is it 4-1 yet? We're getting there. The Vlad is being called into mid lane. They're afraid, obviously, of some sort of contest, but you'll see Varus and Zoe in the same lane quite a lot from mid-game onwards for TSM if they can get side wave control, just to take down the turrets like we mentioned. And you also want to be able to control ward down your side brushes in order to make that happen. But sieging against Heimerdinger, great ARAM champion. So, as you can imagine, in these sort of games, pretty good at delaying out the game and then making it about team fights. Bjergsen's accuracy here is really good. He just EQs really smartly. Like, a play like this is not remarkable. He's queuing to get anyone, but it's hitting the trouble bubble predicting Jensen's movement that gets Jensen out. And Heimerdinger is very pokeable. He has his own siege, but he's squishy and still has no regen in the build because didn't go refillable on double Dorans instead. So anything lands from one, Sven is going to hit a line skill shot, and Heimerdinger can only throw down like max range ultimate, either E or put down a turret and leave. So they're going to lose Mountain Drake, and Mountain Drake's so high value for TSM's comp. A siege comp with Mountain Drake. Awesome. Super awesome. Reaper said the Heimer pick was a giga int. Again, I like it mostly because as a scientific experimentation, I've seen it done with success, run into success against the Zoe. The Varus and Zoe being there means there's a lot of turnaround potential on the pick. But if it gets the priority in the mid lane on the Zoe early, and then you get the Rift Herald, which is what happened in this game, and you make the game about when you're grouping, yes, you might not going to be able to siege down super easily because you're so scared about paddle stars and the lack of regen can hurt. But you can also extend games with Heimerdinger and how he like tanks minions with his turrets and how he's pushing and his Initiation and teamfight is strong. He does a lot of things well without doing things S+ in a way that maybe Sivir can just take over the game. So it's one of those things where I understand in hindsight, you can say, yes, it was a Giga Int Heimerdinger pick, and how is he going to deal with Zoe Varus? But I actually think it was a pretty cool pick that I think had quite a lot of validity if played the perfect way. Now, with the extra information of 2 scrims and Jensen missing a lot of his grenades in this game that we'll see as we go forward, maybe this game picking the Heimerdinger wasn't the right way. But I don't blame the donger. I blame the way it played out. Because like TL are not really sieging. They're pushing in minions first. So it's almost like an anti-siege rather than a siege. Because sieging would imply that Heimerdinger and Sivir are auto-attacking turrets when they're not. They're just pushing in the waves. One wrench is thrown out. Sivir's scared of walking up to 500 range and they're pushing out. So they're more extending the game than sieging necessarily when they're in the same lane. See, 1 auto this time. Feels like double lift and Jensen alone get one, together get 1 auto on turrets every time a minion wave pushes up. Game state not changing. Double lift going, picking up minion waves in top. TL in general, I'm just happy with not losing any outer turrets and Sivir getting an Infinity Edge. Because if you like ask LoL stats to run, what's the win rate on Sivir with 3 outer turrets up when she gets IE? It'd be like 85%, right? Like everyone knows that 3 item Sivir is when she picks up. And if she's got all the outer turrets up ahead, I mean, obviously the win rate with 3 outer turret advantage is going to be huge. But I think you understand what I'm saying. And that like when Sivir gets to decide when she actually starts interacting with team fights and how big her items are, if it's IE, you're having a bad time. Continue to push in, this time with an outnumber, a couple of autos. Double if even walks up. There's the 3 turret advantage, but this is where it gets going. So what do they know? When they start this poke, they're very respectful. They're pretty sure that Vlad is waiting. They know about Abyssal Voyage, and the duo lane's not on the wave. The person who is most likely to be super close to Rek'Sai's on Vision. So this is actually a pretty controlled time to walk up as a bad siege team. In general, walking this far up as a team, you'll notice it here. Like this is almost never correct as Heimerdinger, Sivir, Galio with the map toggle you see here. So shout out to the observers for a really cool map toggle. But knowing Arcadian is there, who doesn't know there's a ward on him, should give them all the information. The moment they see the burrow animation start, they're getting out. And they have Sivir ult to get out. This is getting pretty greedy, though. Like, if you look at the amount of time, like, watch how long they're in auto range of the turret. 23:37. That's 3 seconds of being in pretty scary terrain against the enemy and the potential of Abyssal Voyage coming in. But the Conga line of control wards and Jensen poking over the wall doesn't necessarily show he has vision, but, is a bit of a kind of show off to what could be happening there. By this point, like, things change really fast. Because Arcadian doesn't fully disengage when he's poked out, which should tell TL people are coming. I called JJ realized it. But it ends up being a very, very hard engage attempt. Oh, Broken Blade. So we watch this again. So this is the part I think that's great. The moment that Arcadian turns around his model, it tells you they want to fight. If he keeps walking back, it means they're giving up the turret. Because the turret's dying. So the only reason for Arcadian to turn his model back towards the threat range of Burrow is that they're going to fight you and that the enemy is closer than you might expect. So that's, of course, the part where things get hasty. super decisive engage because Broken Blade's coming in, level 14 to start the play. Broken Blade's got team fight items. He's not super powerful. He doesn't delete people, but he's in a really good spot to hit the fight. So as things start, it ends up being a trade of Heimerdinger for Rek'Sai, which you take every day of the week. The Rek'Sai didn't have a great start. Heimerdinger's a control mage playstyle in a team fight because you're always CCing and putting down turrets and influencing the battle rather than just being a one-round of burst. So Rek'Sai may not die, but Rek'Sai's out of the fight, as we know. Devour is seen, and Impact goes straight in, but instantly exhausted by Smoothie. So everything lasts a bit longer. Arcadian dies in the belly, I believe. Regardless, dies. So it's a 1-for-1. Heimerdinger dead. You love the trade as TSM. That's a good trade. No threat onto Sven and Bjergsen, because the reason why we don't feel like TL falls off in teamfights late is largely because Kennen always has Varus, Zoe to go at. Neither of these champions are reliably nimble. Yes, you have the more Sparkle's movement speed as Zoe, and you can move around a little bit with the portal jump. But, you know, Varus Zoe is a very flankable duo for, say, a Vlad, but the same story for AP Kennen, and that is what we're seeing from Impact. And then Sivir, you know, as a 5v5 champion versus the rest. But the Kennen ult's on cooldown now. So if the Kennen ult isn't used onto Sven and Bjergsen at all, which after the summoners being down, he doesn't threaten these two anymore, this gets to be all Broken Blade. And watch the Broken Blade moment, though, because Smoothie pops, and then Sven and Bjergsen are leaving the fight, and already at level 14, Vlad's going in. And such is Vladimir as a champion that even though he gets taunt flashed by Core JJ and hit, the Hemoplague had already gone down. Really good pull timing. Re-engaged by Sven and Bjergsen because they understand that they have a frontline. What I want you to also consider here is one of the reasons why I really do oppose Vladimir's balance level is Sven and Bjergsen, Zoe and Varus are two champions where if the frontline is there, they're gods of damage. The moment the frontline dies, you know, they can't do much, right? They need a lot of time and space to just auto or to prep paddle stars. Vladimir is supposed to be, you know, a damage carrier and that wins late game fights with damage, and yet, with no frontline except for the Vlad, they're both able to walk back in just because Vlad has the ability to heal, reposition. This play is the best play. Watch Broken Blade here. So after the pull, you know, this first heal comes in for 288. The Proto Belt, which you can use during the pull, in case you guys weren't aware. You can use the E and the Proto Belt during the pull. So consider again, we're going to keep rewinding through this. Taunted with Hemoplague down. And falls lower when the Hemoplague arms can Proto Belt back in for damage. And while Tides of Blood wasn't mid-charge, even knows completely the ranges on the Tides of Blood to guarantee the Galio kill, but also get max damage onto the Kennen. Like, this is sick from Broken Blade. Awesome play from him on the Vladimir. This really, really good play from Broken Blade on the Vlad, and I think this is why Vlad has taken so long to nerf, is that if you do everything, like Vlad is very simple laning phase. You press Q, it's targeted, you get some harassment down. But if you just Q every time and kind of Tides of Blood minions only or Tides of Blood once a fight, Vladimir's not that overpowered. But if you fully abuse 45% CDR and thread your Tides of Blood and Proto Belt and other things during your pull, the amount of damage and space you can control relatively safely, 1v4 or 1v5, while putting down unbelievable damage is super overpowered. Like, that's the thing about Vlad is min-maxed 45% CDR Vlad with all the runes and the free stats he gets access to is not balanced. I've been complaining about Vlad's balance level all of the LCK split, but it took a long time for other regions to play the champion, return to it. I first alerted Riot Balance about Vlad when I saw Nuggery exploiting Transcendence plus scaling CDR, Codex Kindle Gem build in Kesper Cup, December of last year. But solo Q Vlad doesn't always get those extra little bits of damage, and when it's Tides of Blood, there's nothing little about it by the late game. And he's too much free stats for tankiness, for free CDR in the game, and then just AoE threat. Like, Vladimir isn't only does everything champion as the game goes on, and I don't think laning phases have ever been less exploitable than they are in 2019 with biscuits and regen, and there's so many different ways to get through bad lanes that I just don't think there's a way to take down Vladimir without direct nerfs. So I'm disappointed there's no direct nerfs for Vladimir coming to MSI. Like, I really believe that should have happened. Wow, Vision Toggle there was actually very kind to Smithy. But that's just my, that's kind of my issue with the Vlad in particular, is that Vlad has been a problem in Korea. Probably wasn't nerfed because he wasn't a huge problem in solo queue and he wasn't picked that much in other regions. He probably needed to be picked a lot in other regions for there to be enough pro play games for Riot to be heavy-handedly forced into nerfing the Vlad, but now we get a Vlad meta. Like, this MSI is a Vlad meta for sure. Which is a good or bad thing. Like, that's the thing. It's like, I think some people are really hyped that Vlad's one of the big meta top laners. Like, the last time I remember there being a big Vlad top lane meta, Flame and Dyrus were playing Vlad years and years ago. So top lane Vlad at an international tournament hasn't really been the meta in a very long time. It's maybe Season 3. So, given that, Vlad meta. It's coming. Let's have a look at the game state and think about it. It's 26 minutes in. Not much gold lead here for TL, but TL gold lead with the Sivir feels pretty good. No IE is pretty important. The game had been slowed down for a while, but TSM scaling threats picking up teamfight kills. The core being done on the Varus and no IE yet for Sivir will make TL pretty reticent to teamfight, as you can't guarantee you're going to win them at this point. Doublelift doing his best Uzi impression. This wants to pick up IE before he teamfights. I actually think this is correct. We talked already about how TL wouldn't want to fight. At least TL knows it. Like, TL is making a call and sticking to it. Doublelift saying, try to delay Drake. I need IE gold, I'll push top. And that is actually correct. Like, I think Uzi sometimes was fairly criticized for just split pushing because, the team, wouldn't think about any other objective. They'd just say, yeah, okay, whatever, just split push and get your item. But this is TL understanding that with how the last couple of fights has gone, if you now fight again over Mountain Drake when not all your cooldowns and flashes are available and lose, and the game, it leads to a Baron at 26 minutes, because there was already a Mountain Drake. Now there will be 2 for TSM. They take Baron, and you never got a team fight with the game at a fairly even state when IE was available to be bought on Sivir. Sivir's here now. Sivir has IE. This is a very good swap of a second Mountain Drake for an IE. And that sounds crazy because we already said that Mountain is god tier in the Siege comp that TSM have. But given that you lost the last team fight, you hard pursued that as TL. You walked up even though you saw the Rek'Sai award. You now also can't fight for Mountain Drake because that fight led to way more action than they wanted before IE was done. So I do like that they're not doubling down on the mistake. We talk about chasing the loss, and TL has done this in some of our previous reviews. We're not seeing this here, so shot calling, mentality on the day, we can say is pretty good from TL in this game. He's done. Instantly hard team fighting. And they blow up Tahm Kench. Good job. Let's watch this from a TSM perspective. So TSM, they picked up the Mountain Drake. They haven't had river control, and they can't obviously have control of both sides of the river, so they assume TL has quite a lot of river control. They push out mid and start to walk as a group. Cooldowns of relevancy here. Sven is coming in late, doesn't have flash. Smoothie doesn't have flash, which obviously is a pretty big thing. Vlad's not there, but has teleport. They don't have any forward vision. They do see Core JJ and Smithy with the scrying plan. So they knew to poke around it. But this actually ends up being super decisive by TL. Good call from them. The call is the Smoothie doesn't have flash. Get him. What's Sven doing here? Because, they saw Core JJ and Smithy, so they should know what the possibility is here. They might say, okay, I don't think they'll engage, but let's watch the play. So Sven starts walking topside, sees here's, of course, the Sivir and comes back down. So this is pretty curious from Sven. So at this point, like, we're not team fighting, right? Because Vlad hasn't even started teleporting. So we're not team fighting as TSM. The whole walk up and try to back off is lazy because they saw with the scrying plant who was there. So yes, the first call of like, okay, I don't think they're going to engage. Like, that's not a bad thing to say. It was not every team would make that engage. But you also need an exit plan. And so Sven, who was going to walk up top lane, walks back in, and he autos, shoots out an ult, and he gets hit by a taunt, right? So the problem I have here is that at this point you're abandoning it as TSM. You can't turn around the fight here. You haven't started a teleport, and TL is in threat range. But Sven hasn't joined yet. Sven walks up, fights in a control ward, which is nice, but the taunt, it's not even a righteous glory taunt or a taunt flash. He just gets clipped by the taunt. He's revealed his position because he autoed. Like, his position is revealed now. He autoed already, so it's not like he's invisible in a control ward. Like, you guys, of course, saw the clip of Faker and how he revealed himself in the Griffin series, I think it was. In that really big play that came through from Tarzan, the blind cocoon. This is the same mechanic. Like, obviously he ordered, right? So he's revealed. He's in vision for at least part of this, and then, yeah, it's a very strange call from TSM. Like, the teleport starts, for context. Let's watch it when it starts. The teleport starts now, so Vladimir would not get into the team fight until, like, the Vladimir's still not in the team fight with the ward that he teleported onto. So, very peculiar decision to fully fight there. It starts off from a lazy back. To have a ward above. I mean, that's extra information. That's good to know. But in this particular case, like, the actual fight timing isn't too relevant. But TL have more vision than expected and are more decisive than TSM expect. But then TSM don't just have Smoothie die. They at least fake that they're going to fight. Sven walks back up to fight rather than disengaging, and Broken Bay was never going to get this. So this is actually a really poor contest of this area that wasn't necessary. Broken Bay is trying to poke around a Barons, takes his whole health bar. It gets them off Barons, that's fine. They get Hemoplague down, but it is going to get the back off from TL. So I think overall, pretty good job by TL. I think they make good decisive shot calls, which I think is something that I am taking away from this game, is that their shot calls have been decisive. Like, not every team says all in and Cataclysm onto Smoothie right now, because the Vladimir's already beaten you in a team fight. You expect there's a TP ward somewhere around here, and you just need to be on the decisive side. But they make the all in even after getting seen by Scrying Plant, knowing their damage, how squishy the Tahm Kench is, and they get a bonus Varus, is kind of how I look at it. So, good decisive call from TL in this particular fight. It's really good discussion between Azael and Kobe here. Like, it's definitely to try to bait TP out of Impact to get Broken Blade TP advantage again, but the TP is amusingly not up. So Impact just walks up. So you look at TSM's comp, they can't tank Baron well. You normally only make a hard start as that if it's 20 minutes and you're trying to sneak it, or if you have, say, an Ornn, a tank support and a tank jungler in order to just tank up the Baron infinitely. If you have a Warmog's champion, you can make those plays where you start Baron, the Warmog's user tanks it, you see if the enemy is going to get caught on the way by a Varus ult or a Zoe ult. No harm, no foul if you have to back away, because Warmog's just means that the damage from Baron is trivial. If you have a comp like this with no Warmog's user, you can't just kite forward and back on the Baron, so you only do plays like that to draw out a teleport cooldown that was a couple of seconds away. So that was like, you know, it was still a very good play, I would say, overall, from TSM to try it. It had very low cost. All right, let's watch Impact. So Impact had walked up. He just leaves and meets the minion wave bot lane. With this formation, TL can make a map movement. You look at TL's comp. TL have a really strong Baron comp. So that's kind of the awkward thing here is if you try to cut off, if you try to use an Abyssal Voyage gank, there are some comps where you look at the enemy and say they have no real way to take Baron if you send 3 or 4 people bot lane. I would say TL's Baron is really strong. Heimerdinger's Baron control is really high. They have a Jarvan to tank it, so they have a double tank lineup. And Sivir has IE, so they have a lot of Baron threat. Impact gets, you know, ganked by 3 people, will eventually die. There's no way to stop that. Pick in the mid lane is so important here. Yeah, I forgot about this from live. Oh. We kind of have to watch this in replay, because it ends up being an atrocity where TSM get a lot of kills. So they get the Baron from all of this. Let's watch the replay. Let's slow it down. So a lot of things happen. So at this point, I'm thinking that TL will just go to Baron, because this is when the Abyssal Voyage has been used, right? The Abyssal Voyage has been used to try to capitalize on the Kennen in bot lane. Now, Kennen had flash up and teleport up, so it's not the easiest gank to pull off, but when you send in 3 members, you're probably going to kill the Kennen. The mid lane here, I would have assumed that Double Lifting Smithy and Jensen would go to Baron because they have very good quick Baron take with 3 turrets and also the evolved turret from the Heimerdinger and just the Sivir damage, plus they have Galio, Jarvan to both tank it and turn off it. That's how you would assume this play would go, especially because the camera live is on the bot lane play. But it doesn't play out that way at all. Like when it comes to lane assignments in this case and making the wombo play from TSM, I don't like it because I'm so scared of Baron. Some comps, if this was, let's say it's a different team, like let's say it's Ahri, Sivir, Kindred, then this play from TSM going bot lane is actually really good because you look at the enemy comp and you're like, well, those guys do Baron pretty fast, but they can't tank it, and we can just TP to the Baron to contest it. Rek'Sai can look for a steal. That's a very low percentage chance of doing Baron, but TL have speed, the ability to tank and turn. Now, this is a really good Baron team from TL, so it's pretty risky to make this play. However, it doesn't go that way at all. Smithy, again, just goes for an R on a target who doesn't have flash. It's what worked against the Tahm Kench. Yeah, really well played by TL to find a catch here. I feel like twice TSM just wouldn't have thought that these Cataclysm all-ins would happen. But then the play evolves a bit, because now we got to the point where TSM can get back, right, from the 1-for-1 that happened here. You can take the inner turret, kite back to the Baron, and just cement Baron control and look for a catch. You're probably not going to start the Baron anymore. You know TSM will get in position, but you get a free inner turret. They try to use their damage to get an inhibitor turret, and that's bold by TL. I think this is too much to try to claim in one go, especially because no ults were used apart from Chain of Corruption and Abyssal Voyage to make the pick in bot lane. So to fully explain that point, Hemoplague is up and Rek'Sai ult is up. So Hemoplague being up means that unless you got a really sound exit plan, things can go real bad. So you watch in this play, it's another Arcadian loves going in as one. He knows he can go in onto Heimerdinger and that the rest of the team will try to kite around him. And it's just another awesome flash from Broken Blade. Broken Blade gets so much damage. He loses off, what, one tick of pool? But that's the only thing he loses here. Just watch this play. The tools left available to TSM are used super well. Again, it's Arcadian getting in, not having to flash, using his ult to extend the amount of time he's in the fight. And then the flash angle is just a great one from the Vladimir. Like, you watch Vlad, he's walking. If you look at the general pathing he's taken, which is kind of like a line straight up based on the angle we're at, he's walking to catch them if they try to go down the lane to defend. They kite up, and then the fat flash into early Hemoplague timing. He gets 3 in the Hemoplague. Not the easiest to hit the circle on 3 with the cast range as you come over the flash. And if not for the Blast Plant, he actually kills Doublelift most likely with just 4 points in his pool. And they might be able to kill off the entire team. That's, again, awesome execution on Vlad. So already, if TSM fans want to say they have the best Vladimir player in the league, I think you're probably right. Broken Blade has impressed me now. I think it's 3rd time on Vlad. But I've been really impressed with his skill threading, I guess, is like kind of the weird term to use to describe it. Really, really well done. And I'm already banning Vlad pretty consistently against TSM the rest of the series. And now the Vlad has the items where you're like, well, we still like the Sivir. And the Heimerdinger often will, in an unorganized team fight, be able to do a lot. But Zoe, I guess, before the team fight starts, is probably going to... If you try to equate Zoe poking and getting a pick chance before a team fight to Heimerdinger putting down a turret that does a lot of work or stunning 4 people, I think overall, if you want to work out the power curve, I probably like Zoe right now. I definitely like Vlad right now, given there's no stasis on Kennen. Kennen went Banshee Veil for side lane, but this game has been much more about team fighting, and the no Zonias means it's, I think probably you want to go Gunblade into stasis rather than the Banshee Veil, because Gunblade, Banshee Veil, and healing reduction all are laning items. But the stasis is okay in the lane because you can't be turret dived and died taking Hemoplague damage, and it's way better in the team fight than Banshee Veil. So at some point you built so many items to lane against Vlad that it might actually cost you as trying to be the normal role of an AP Cannon in a team fight. So I'm probably liking TSM in the next 5v5 unless TL can really fight around terrain well or have a huge vision lead. And vision leads obviously just baby a lot of different scenarios. So TSM's execution has been really good in this game. In fights of their choice, but when it almost feels like whoever starts the fight, if they're starting the right fight, like the execution has been good. They've carried it through. The 2 picks from Smithy with his Cataclysm have been big, but when Broken Blade has got the flank, that's been the way that TSM have been finding their leads. (4-1) like we mentioned from TSM. Not the 4-1 we usually see, which is 4 in the mid lane, 1 in the top of bot, but still a 4-1. You really want Zoe and Varus in the same lane. Way on the minion wave. This is a really nice play by CoreJJ. So let's watch this play by CoreJJ. So CoreJJ in vision, I believe spotted going into this brush. I'm not sure where the vision radius is on that ward. I'm going to guess it might just be out of range. The sweeper catches, but CoreJJ waiting here trying for a hard engage, and it's a Sivir hard engage comp with Vlad in the mid lane. Vlad's going to take a while to get here, and without Vlad in the equation, you would take TL in a true teamfight sense if it started by a taunt. So CoreJJ sneaking into this control water brush is now spotted by this first tick of this sweeper, but the amount of time to adjust to it is so minimal, and CoreJJ engaging on Galio support, not something you usually see, but that's actually super well done to get something approaching and engage in that scenario. Like, the amount of times where you're actually engaged on there is so minimal, but even given all of that, it's just a 1-for-1 where you lose jungle for Tom Kench, which is still advantage TSM. So really nicely done by the Galio, but it's kind of betrayed by the Jarvan because they get the first kill. And then, if you see what happens here, Smithy goes in after Core JJ's used everything, after Impact's used everything, to chase for more kills. Probably feeling like, you know, Sivir's got this, Doublelift's got this. But Doublelift actually can't follow. So this is kind of the solo queue Malphite ults over a wall and no one can follow scenario. Start of the play is awesome by Core JJ, but Smithy sees something that's not there. It's like a mirage that they can get further kills here. And what should have been a 1-for-0 and then just a kind of disengage, wait for the next minion wave, wait out the Baron, it actually ends up being a health bar disadvantage for TL, which is really, really awkward. It relieves some 4-1 pressure, and it does mean the super minions can push through mid lane for a while, but they're going to lose the inner turret here overall. Yeah, you can see it here, right? Like this part at the start is played as you would expect everyone to do. You can spit over the wall, so Smoothie does save Sven. But Smoothie's dead, like so dead, and so many of their tools have been used at this point. Like you pause and all ults are on cooldown. And yet, like Smithy goes over the wall on Sven when there's no one that can follow him. Like Sivir doesn't even have flash to flash over, and flashing over past Vladimir is never going to happen. So that's a pretty big mistake in execution from the Jarvan. Should just be a 1-for-0. Pushing forward. TSM's gold lead with some of those flanks from the Vladimir is the reason that they're very, very teamfight ready for sure. And now you're in a scenario with a lot of TP, like the TP's down, no one's side laning. It just becomes about flank vision and team fighting and the execution around there. So we're just watching a lot of people patrol side lanes. Cannon's looking for a flank while Vlad is. The Tremor Sense is giving them a lot of control. Most angles without Broken Blade getting backline access, I still do like what TL has going, but it's a lot of counting cooldown. This is definitely the like heart in your mouth moment for both comps here. And then Doublelift just takes free damage. Like this is stressful for both sides. Like no one knows exactly how strong they are. TL kite up because they want to clear out control ward vision around Baron. And then Doublelift just does this, you know? And it's really peculiar because if you watch this play, like, why is Doublelift walking like this with no one around him? Let's try and give Doublelift the benefit of the doubt. It's not Season 1 where he would face check all the time, right? Let's talk about the goals of TL. They're kiting up to get Baron control, and they don't want to have TSM as a 5 push through mid lane and siege down turrets. TSM have a siege comp. Everyone has said that a million times, including me during this analysis. So, the only reason to go this way from this moment onwards is to kill the minion wave. You really would love as Doublelift, as TL kites upwards to get Baron control, and then tries to reset to stop just being pushed through mid, to kill the minion wave with, I guess it's not a pizza in this skin, but you know, with 1 Q. So I think he's trying to auto the minion, right? Like, he wants to snipe the minion wave, which we can see. Let's see how big the minion wave is. So it's just 3 caster minions and the turret. But it's 4 minions, so I don't think auto-attacking that 1 minion is going to do anything. You're not poking Arcadian with Guardian Angel. Like, no one does that play. This is a really, really weird play from Doublelift. Because if you watch how TSM's approaching this and think of all the possibilities of what Doublelift could be doing, Bjergsen's stopping Kennen if Kennen was going to flash over the wall and engage onto 4. He has a vision of that. they know Kennen's not there. So Bjergsen's in position. He wants to use the wall to extend his threat range and also to watch to make sure Kennen's not flanking them. So the formation here, like around this, is just so peculiar from Doublelift. Like, is it possible that someone said rapid fire cannon? Is it possible that rapid fire cannon's coming up now, so you wanted to auto attack the cannon here and get out? Like, even that is so ultra bold when no one else on your team seems to even be aware of it. Like, JJ, like, watch the path here and consider what the call was. I can get the cannon. I can get the cannon. I can get the minion wave. Let's try and be Doublelift in this case. I can get the minion wave. I can get the cannon. In that case, JJ should at least be walking towards Doublelift. Instead, like, they're all walking upwards, trying to get around back to the minion wave, and they just get blown up. So that felt very much like a, first game of a final, 36-minute call that wasn't clear enough, and TSM can just explode people. Like, that's not TSM out 5v5ing. That's Doublelift just straight up dying, right? Even in slow motion, it's more like inting than an effortful smart play. Like, Occam's Razor is actually pretty undecided on what he's trying to do there. So even giving Doublelift the credit he deserves as a multi-time champion and much smarter player than he was when he had a penchant for the face check, like, that was we have to be pretty creative to come out with what was going on there. Like, it must have been either no call or a very early call that the team didn't intuit that he could cut the minion wave, because the only reason to walk up here is to cut the minion. He's not poking Guardian Angel Rek'Sai, right? Like, we can all agree on that. Like, we can give Doublelift as much benefit of the doubt as traditionally makes sense, but like, this is a huge, huge error to lose a game on. They lose a Baron, they lose their AD carry, they lose map control. You lose so much from this play. And now Vlad is strong enough with 6 items to run at people with Baron buff. And this is so scary, because now Vlad can actually play one lane with the rest. Once you get Baron, you have 2 options. You can play side lane as 7-kill Vlad and slowly chip away with the extra AP conversion on turrets, or you can just throw the Hemoplague down, run at the enemy, Protobelt, W, Zonia, zone away a team. That's what Vlad can do. So they're waiting for all the minion waves to push in at TSM. The Vlad is so insanely huge. With double mountain. Ridiculous. Playing the 1 lane. Takes that first turret. Yeah, TL can't. TL have a comp that, while it team fights well, in these sort of cases where the enemy has so much damage, Jensen can get poked. They can't force people to fight around Heimerdinger's damage, which is turrets. So they're just watching inhibitors go down. Yeah, and then, you just blow them up here. It was a pretty unsettling game watching it live. That's the only game I watched live, because it felt like it was building to something huge, and then a solo call to cut a minion wave decided the game completely. Like, you saw the areas in the game where TL were good. They were very good at decisive shot calls that got them leads. And then TSM were really good at the flank plays, and Broken Blades Vladimir was clearly emerged as a must ban. And even if TL wins this game, they don't approach blue side second round drafts as confidently against the counter picks available. Like, TSM's ability to pick Zoe provoked a Heimerdinger matchup, which, while Heimerdinger can do well in, it's a matchup where Bjergsen's played a lot more Zoe than the enemy teams even scrimmed Heimerdinger. So that's already kind of like potential for skill differences in the play right there. And then it's an overall red side counter pick to Broken Blade with Vladimir open. And Vladimir has been a pick that he's shown a lot on. So even if TL win this game, they're not walking away without adjustments for their next series. And TSM got the right flanks, I think would have won this game, even not for the face check. But then it's kind of like if Game of Thrones ends with a really like one note ending that isn't like layers and layers upon 8 years of episodes, and you're just like, oh, was it really all of that for this? So this is definitely the bad end, I would say, for this particular game. But credit to Broken Blade, awesome on the carries again. Like, what a second half of this season. Like, there was stuff we liked about him, but he had some like flaws to his game. But downplaying those flaws and performing like this in game one of a series was really, really impressive. And TL, the only advantage they come away with is they're like, okay, we know what the counter pick kind of texture of the draft looks like from TSM on the red side. And okay, it's pretty easy to put to one side that level of throw. Like, that's the one where Doublelift says, coach, I won't do that again. And you trust that he won't do that again. Like, the way that game ended isn't a tilter. It's actually quite easy to be mentally strong through that, because it's not like TL were winning by much, arguably not winning, and then the game was over. So I actually don't think that's like the worst loss to take for TL in a game number one, but we're already talking about like shining a bad situation for them rather than embracing a victory. Like, TSM red side played a good red side draft that had internal consistency of 4-1. The one was Broken Blade, who was split pushing and team fighting really well, and deserved to win this one. So that's my game one review. We started off with quite a lot of preamble, so it definitely went long, but future games will most likely be a bit shorter. But I'm going to take a short eating break over here, play a couple of ads, and come back with a couple of questions from you guys, talk over the subscriptions from people that subscribed, and then we'll get into the game 2 review without too much delay. So it's going to take a short snack break. Thank you very much for joining me for game number 1 of TSM versus TL. We've got plenty more to go after the break.